Okay, hello. Welcome to the Ops Nest industry session. Really like to thank all of our attendees as you're joining, our panelists who I'll introduce you to in just a second, and then Yoonity, who are our production provider on our open sessions, and Sorenson, who provide our interpreters, Catherine and Mike, who you'll be seeing through this feed. So a bit of scene setting first. So last week it was the OpsNest 5th birthday. So it's 5 years since we started Ops in lockdown. You know, those 3 weeks we were going to go into lockdown for, and we created half an hour, 45-minute piece of content each week to kind of keep us all going on those 3 weeks off we were going to have. It kind of got to the end of August and it just wasn't sustainable to keep going on that basis, and we formed the Ops Nest. But throwing back to that, we've always committed to making sure a chunk of our content is totally free and accessible for whoever wants to absorb it and enjoy it. And the industry session that we're now hosting is one of 3 that we do each year. So every year we have a bit of a different topic, and this year, funnily enough, along with the rest of the world, it's all about AI because it's kind of making waves in and around our jobs. And Ops is kind of really prime for some of that change, but also really a bit resistant in some ways as well. So the purpose of this chat is to really understand some of the challenges, the opportunities, and then just some starting points about how we get on. So because we're in Ops and we're action focused, I would like you as attendees to share in the chat any AI tools that you're already using. And we're just going to throw up a little poll now. So you just need to click on the poll button. And we're just going to ask you a couple of questions around, first off, what if you're using any AI, just to give us a bit of a sense check. We will, at the end of the session, be asking our panelists, and I'll throw in one myself, a top AI tip that we all use. So you can go away and explore those kinds of things as well, but also just glean whatever you can from the chat of what other tools people are using. And then I'm just going to do a quick plug before I introduce the panelists, and that is we're taking this a step further. So on the 5th of June at Excel, Adam and I are gathering 2/3 of a room of ops people, 1/3 of a room of tech people, getting us all in a room. And we are going to hack the hell out of some of our ops challenges and see what we can come up with in terms of tools we can work on straight away, and maybe some things that we could go into development on. So Fee's going to pop that link in the chat in case you're interested in that. So enough rabbiting on. I'm Kiwanuka. I'm founder of the Ops Nest. My job in this is to kind of ask the questions and kind of give an ops perspective on everything. Adam Parry has joined us. If you don't already know Adam, where have you been? Head on LinkedIn and follow him straight away, because he is the key guy at Event Tech Live and Event Industry News. So he's bringing kind of real broad perspective on technology in our industry and sees it from lots of broad and different angles. Then we've got Beverley Honey. I've asked Beverley to join us because Beverley's role in the industry is unique from kind of, I think we need more Beverleys in the ops side. So Beverley kind of integrates and kind of consults on bringing technology into event businesses. So she's a real integrator. So it's one of the key areas where we fall down on is the integration of tech tools into our business planning. So wanted Beverley's perspective. And then last but not least, Stephen Cox is from Samurai AI. He's a tech builder, an entrepreneur. He's like at the cold face of kind of that innovation and providing solutions. So we've got a bit of a broad, round view, I think, that will mean that we get some really good content out of this session. So thanks very much for joining us. Are we all ready for the first question? Brilliant. Okay, so first question is AI the new email? I'm going to set a bit of context around this. When I started in the industry, I don't want to give it away, but we were using kind of Control F for like things instead of mice and things like that. And we were there was one computer with email on it, And so I was probably at the beginning of the kind of email into business world. And we all thought that our jobs would be so much easier because email would be in play. 30 years on, doesn't really feel like it's been that much easier. In fact, sometimes it feels worse because we used to sit in a room and talk about things instead of being kind of copied on everything. So, Adam, to you first. Is AI the new email?
It's getting there already. Not quite yet, but I think within the next couple of years, we'll certainly see AI help to massively reduce the number of emails. And for me, that's split into two kind of spheres. One, there's a customer facing sphere, you know, people wanting specifically around events, let's say quick access to information. They've archived the email under bin and forgot about it, or they've just not looking hard enough. And I think we're seeing some of that already come onto kind of mainstream consumer websites and things like that through chatbots that also learn about the business, learn about what customers want, and then respond to that, which for me is the first step, because a lot of our inbound emails from an operations perspective, especially from exhibitors and sponsors, 90% of it is all the same stuff, right? You kind of responding to the same things over and over again, even though they've had that information in some respect. And I think actually, although there are lots of us that still prefer to do email or pick up the phone or whatever, there's actually lots of people that just want an immediate response from something and are quite happy to chat with AI-powered chatbots. I think we'll see some of that come out from existing technology providers and platforms. Like I know Fair are already looking into developing something hooked up into their exhibitor manual, which will ultimately work on behalf of the event organizer on that behalf. And then on a personal level, I'll share this in the chat now. I'm already using this tool, which is Fixer. One of my now go-to technologies, happily pay for it forever and a day. And what it does is it records meetings like this. So obviously it does all the call record notes and things like that. Nothing new there. But what it's also doing for me is it's starting to learn how I respond to people and what we respond to people about, and starting to build out automated responses that I check and decide whether I send them or not, or edit them in line. And what's really clever about it, it will also do positive and negative responses. So you can agree to something or you can disagree to something. And at first I thought this was just going to be really like light touch, generic kind of like, oh, this is going to be like one sentence, a couple of lines. It's not going to offer any level of context or anything like that. But the more you use it, the more it really intelligently learns about your business and about your style. And although, you know, writing one email might seem a very small amount of time, when you get hundreds of emails like me stacking up in the day, that's a lot of people to respond to. I think it's like probably like the equivalent of like 10 or 20 books a month or something like that. So if you're even saving half an hour a day, I think that's really worth it. And I'm pretty sure we've only just started using it internally, but I'm pretty sure as the event gets closer, it will start to really come into its own. One final thing on that, it also starts to automatically label and file things in your inbox. So you can look at things like promotions or needs a response or just for your information, things like that. So very long way of saying, not just yet, but I don't think in a distant future, it'll dramatically reduce the amount of emails that we have to handle.
No, I agree. I use Fixer as well. Thank you very much, Adam, for the tip a couple of months ago. But one of the things that I find particularly useful about it is it takes all of that marketing stuff out of my to-do list inbox and kind of puts that into a box so that I only look at it when I'm ready. So I suppose in that sense, it kind of supercharges emails. Now, which could be a good or, I think generally it could be a good thing. Emails are clunky and quite often irrelevant and interrupt your day. So I'm all for it in that sense. So, Stephen, can we come to you on that kind of question? So is AI just another email kind of change in our world that means we're just going to have to work harder all the time?
The short answer I would say is no. I think I get what you're saying in terms of email was this kind of promised land where once it appeared, everything was just going to be a breeze and, we wouldn't have to do anything anymore. And that's not the case because we're busier than ever in our inbox now. And I think AI is different in the sense that now that we have these autonomous agents that are starting to be created that can actually handle the entire workflow from beginning to end on your behalf, that genuinely does take a load off your plate. But there are also areas, just like with any technology, where it will make things clunkier in the short run. An example of that would be, I'm sure everybody has tried to call a bank or some other kind of business and been passed through, 5 different AI chat services before you actually get to a real human. So there is going to be some period of adaptation, I think, where we, as a culture and as a society, work out what we actually want to use this technology for and what we still want to keep that human aspect for. Because make no mistake about it, AI is changing everything. And over the next 5 to 10 years, I believe that the world will look like a very, very different place. And we have to consciously choose what we let into our lives and how we interface with it in order to kind of shape that future.
Yeah, I like that. The kind of the tools to enable us to put boundaries around what we want in our life and what we don't, or what we want to push onto the side. Beverley, what about you?
Well, I think that my thoughts around this kind of follow that AI absolutely can help, but they could also accelerate bad processes. So it's really important that we look at the training and what the outcome is, and making sure that we don't just multiply those clunky processes. We need to refine and take the time to look at what the outcome is. It can certainly help us work smarter, but it has to be with the right intent and not just dropped in as a quick fix.
I think here the challenge that we're going to have in operations is that quite often we're running at such a pace that actually to stop and look at our processes and kind of get back to what would be the best version to do something, that takes significant time. It also takes a certain type of brain kind of way of thinking. Now, I think ops have got the right way of thinking. In fact, I think maybe within the whole organization, ops might have a head start on that kind of process driven thing, because we have to have processes to get 1,000 exhibitors in a hall, all doing what we need them to do. So we're good on processes. What we're not good on is time to sit back and look at it strategically. And I'm just going to add in a book recommendation here that Tim Group from Grip gave to us earlier in the year, which is the book called Thinking in Systems, and I'll put it in the post event notes, because I think if I were an ops leader, I'd read a book or something similar to that really get your head into the right way to make sure that those processes are good processes, not, like you say, just rehashing some old ones and making it worse. Okay, thanks for that. So that's question 1 done. Question 2 is, right, so who's building the AI in our industry or around our industry, or the tools? And do they even know what ops is? Because quite often we're left out of the tech conversation. That's not a whinge, just it is. We're not interfacing with tech very much directly in operations. So how do we build tools that are relevant to what we're doing, or are we going to need to retrofit tech that doesn't quite fit? Beverley, we'll come to you first this time, please.
Well, I think most AI tools aren't being built by people that know event operations. That's a fact, and it's our job to work out what tools are fit for purpose for what we're trying to achieve. I think senior leadership obviously need to have a big part of that within organizations. But what we really need to do is have a set of prompt engineers, and that is operations people, right? We can go to AI tools. We need to know what we want to get out of the tool. We train them. They need to work for us around our own businesses and our own requirements. But the role of like a prompt engineer is somebody who understands the business, understands the context, and also understands what the output is required. You don't necessarily know how you get there, and that's the beauty of AI, that can do the wonderful stuff. And I think that's where ops people are going to come into to their own is really understanding to put the context. And, you know, one of the key things as an ops person is know AI, get ahead of it, really be at the forefront of it, so that you can guide your organization. I know that there's always that fear, isn't there, that AI is going to take over and we're not going to have any jobs. But we will. We just need to position ourselves and make sure that the right tool is in place.
Right. So kind of a top tip for ops people from you then would be like, just even understand what a prompt engineer does, how they think, what the process is, to kind of try and get a bit of a head start on what things are, I guess.
Be technical. I think that's really key. You just need to have context, understanding, and ops people naturally, project managers, we break things down. That's how we are, you know, trained, and it's in our blood. So perfect opportunity.
And I'd say on that front, it's about ops people are great at thinking about the second, third, fourth thing that might happen down the line, and that's what a prompt engineer needs to grasp, isn't it? So big tick on that front. Brilliant. Okay, Stephen, over to you for this one as well.
So who's actually building these tools in the industry? Well, I am, but shameless self-promo aside, I think one of the things that a lot of businesses, not just in this industry, but in general, are struggling with at the moment is that we are currently at this weird interface point between SaaS and AI. And okay, so,
sorry, I'm going to interrupt. For any people that don't know what SaaS is, could you just explain it?
It stands for software as a service. So these are your monthly subscriptions to different software packages. And a lot of businesses out there now have about 12 different packages, softwares that they're paying monthly for, that each solve one specific problem. And a lot of these softwares are AI integrated in some way. But just because you have all of these tools, it doesn't mean that it forms one cohesive tech stack. So being able to understand tools like Zapier and like Make and NA10, those what I like to call stitching tools that can, stitch these different softwares together and allow them to communicate and share information across one another, I think is going to be the most important thing that businesses can look at over the next 18 months. And I do believe that in a couple of years' time, we may well transition away from this kind of SaaS heavy model that the world has seemed to move towards. Everything's a subscription now. Funny story, I actually signed up for a milk subscription yesterday. Some guy on the street he recruited me to this new app. It's like the Modern Milkman, and you get milk delivered to your house and other stuff on a subscription. So, you know, whether that's a good thing or not remains to be seen. But
100% a good thing. I'm all for my milkman's deliveries. It's true, isn't it? You kind of accumulate these kind of relatively cheap feeling subscriptions to things. We found that in the Ops Nest as we've been trying to figure out what our kind of perfect tech stack is, only to realize kind of 4 years down the line there is no perfect tech stack. And you're right, it's those stitching, I didn't know that term before, the kind of stitching kind of tools that we really need to feel more confident in, that to make it all kind of seamless and work. Adam, over to you.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, I think Beverley and Stephen have covered this really succinctly. But the analogy I'd give is those in operations are really akin to actually a technology role, which is project manager or engineering manager in technology. Now, I'm saying this lightly because there might be a mass exodus of operations managers into technology because those skills are massively transferable. And these individuals, they're not technical, they're not responsible for coding, but what they are responsible for is things like understanding where the business focus is, the project strategy, the requirements the business needs, and the outcomes that are going to be observed. And they keep all of that on track for the business without ever touching a line of code. They need a technical understanding to a degree. They need to know how those systems, back to your point which Tim made about how that system works, that system thinking, but they never touch a line of code. And I think actually that's where my recommendation for anybody in operations is to start to look and hone those skills, because when you're interfacing with the technologies that Stephen suggested there, like Zapier and Make.com, these iPaaS systems, and Beverley's mentioned about talking to suppliers and having those conversations and understanding what can be done, they're going to be in a really, really strong position. And I've said personally, when it comes to the events industry on all levels, there's kind of two themes of topic that I think are going to put people in really strong positions when it comes to career development and being valuable to organizations. And that's a deep, extensive knowledge around sustainability and technology and innovation. I think those two things can really, really put somebody in a really, really strong position, because you need to understand all of that I've just mentioned, align it with the business, and also talk on a technological level to the supply chain as well. But I will say one other thing. I think the barrier to entry in terms of who's building this technology is drastically changing. We now have systems like StackBlitz, Bolt.new, Lovable, Firebase. Google just released one where the term, although I think it's a bit of a fluffy term, it's called vibe coding, is that those with the vision and the creativity to understand what they want out of a product and the challenges that it's solving can now use platforms like that to start to build out the essence of those technology platforms. We'll be showcasing some of this at the AI Ops Hackathon, or at least I'm going to try and get everybody to start doing this at the event. But that's really changing now. The depth and level of the complexity of those technologies is far off what's currently in the industry. But certainly to solve some small challenges, like, I don't know, like exhibitors checking in on something or those kinds of things are definitely on the cards to be able to be coded quite quickly.
Yeah. I was there's a lot in everything that you've all just said that I want to kind of pick up on. Number one is around that kind of senior leadership, that systems thinking. So if you're a senior leader in ops, get your head around systems thinking as soon as you can, because you're the key person in it who's going to either mess it right up or absolutely nail it. Nobody below you is going to be able to do that because they don't have the strategic mindset that an ops leader has, or the budget, or the kind of, the oversight of everything. Beverley, I think that idea about kind of the acceleration of bad processes, I think we all need to know and be able to flag when something is being done for the sake of it, or just trying something out, and how far do you let it run? So a bit of a kind of control measure on that one. And then Stephen, there was something that I think you said in the run through that I don't think we've pulled out fully in this one, which I thought was really good, which is to treat AI tools like a member of staff. Train them as if they were a member of your team. The OpsNest girls laugh at me because Fred, who is my version of ChatGPT, they think I've got a slightly awkward relationship with him. Maybe it's going a bit too far, but no, I do think he's like my right-hand guy right now, apart from Tam and Fee.
Can I just say something? The biggest usage of AI already is for therapy.
Yeah, so many people.
Yeah,
absolutely, definitely. Well, that's another story. I won't talk about that on this one. Right. Okay, so if AI handles the repeatable stuff, I mean, here's the big question about those that might be in fear of like what things look like for us. But yeah, if AI handles all the repeatable stuff and the therapy, what do we actually become? What are our roles going to be? Now, I'm going to kind of preface that with, in my thinking, I've not done any full research on this, but if I think about my jobs list as an ops person running shows, I'd say probably about 50% of it is administrative and 50% of it is creativity, problem solving, communicate, like kind of moving everybody to the right, to what you need them to do, all that side of things. So I'd say potentially about 50% of our jobs might be AI-able. So what do we become? We've probably slightly covered this a little bit, but let's just go over the detail of it. Stephen, we'll come to you first.
Well, when you boil it down to the basics, AI gives you leverage over your efficiency. And people have been told for the last 30 years that you should specialize in something, that's where the money comes from, is building these skills, these deep-rooted skills in one specific area. But I think we're seeing a shift now where everything is becoming easier. We have kind of mastered user interfaces on different software products to the point where most people, if you have a decent understanding of technology, you can find a tool that does what you're looking to do and then have a go yourself. And there's a good chance that you'll succeed. So I think where we're going to see a shift is those really high agency people who don't mind having a go and just trying to solve a problem on their own, really being rewarded with AI. And I think operations fits that to a T. Mm. And I know you mentioned, 50% of the workload is admin. I think there's very few ops managers out there who actually prefer the admin side of things over organizing incredible shows, traveling to them, actually seeing the thing that you've been planning come to fruition. And the future that I envisage is, a future with very little admin work at all, where you have teams of people who manage the agents as they run the day-to-day and leave the people free to be creative, use that human creativity that AI doesn't have to think big picture. And if you're an events company and you're planning 4 events a year at the moment, then you could do 8. And ultimately, that's why I chose the events industry to specialize in, because I think it's one of the very few industries where the use of AI can actually result in more human connection and more people coming together, which I think is a good thing. Because if companies can organize more events by using AI to automate the boring, time-consuming stuff, then why wouldn't you?
Or better connections within events, so being able to spend more time on creating those moments and those experiences within the event. I like that thinking.
And even using AI to do the marketing side of things and actually find the right people who you want to come to your events and use the AI to do that outreach to them. At the moment, there is still a lot of resistance towards AI being used in sales outreach. It's looked down upon. People think if this is an AI message, then it has a lesser value than a human written message. We seem to be valuing people's time investment in the sales outreach that we receive. But I think that there is going to be a societal shift and an adaptation over the next 5 years or so, where people kind of learn to accept that this is how things work now. And they learn to look beyond the fact that it's AI and more look at what the people behind the AI are trying to achieve.
I like that. At this point, I'll just interject that yes, people, even though they know that the panto that I've just spurted out at the pub is AI generated, the laughs and the camaraderie that we have around doing something like write me a panto about the Maybush Inn in Great Oakley, Essex, they like the what you've put into it to get the fact that Ian the landlord is this evil figure, and you're right, it's I've moved beyond that, but I know a lot of people haven't. I know a lot of people want you to do the hard work and the hard graft before you get a cheer out of them.
And I'm sure there was a lot of times, when power tools were invented, for example, where people thought anybody that uses a power tool to make my cabinet, well, that's no good. I'd much rather have a hand chiseled cabinet. Whereas nowadays, it's not really something we think about. If we have a cabinet made, we just expect the people to use power tools to do it because it's more efficient for them. It takes them less time. We get the product faster. And I think that's the way that AI is going to be looked at going forward.
Like that. Beverley.
I think Stephen covered a lot there. I think the ultimate thing is going to make people work smarter. It's going to free up time to be more strategic. If you don't want to be, if strategy and more holistic thinking isn't your strong suit, then you're going to be concentrating on that kind of training of the AI and refining of processes. So, you know, it is going to free up time, but your time's just going to be allocated in a different way.
Yeah, interesting. Actually, I like that kind of, because actually, sorry, Stephen, I will say, actually, a lot of ops people don't like the creative side. We love a to-do list. We love the admin. It's like, oh, I've got 20 things I've got to do today. Bam, bam, bam. We get pure joy out of that. So actually, the thought of taking the admin away, we're like, no, that's our me time.
But does the enjoyment come from actually doing them, or does the enjoyment come from ticking them off and seeing that completed checklist?
All of the above. We love spreadsheets. We like, give us an Excel spreadsheet and we're at an apps. Look how many likes there are.
I can see.
Give us a spreadsheet. We love it. Just the clunky data side of it. Love a list. Yeah. However, I think what I haven't recognised until this conversation just now is that actually, you're right, Beverley. They are the prompt engineers, the people that love that side of our job. They're the prompt engineers, and the people that love the creativity, problem solving, on-sitey type stuff. They're the creatives kind of side. And maybe actually ops diverges in two different paths from here. Who knows? Anything else to add to that, Beverley? I just realised I just went.
I just think I like the idea of, so you've got your Fred and you're constantly training Fred, that everyone in ops is going to have their own version of Fred, and so you put the effort into finding AI solutions that do things that you don't want to do, but allows you to concentrate on the things that you love.
I like that. Right, Adam, you're looking very thoughtful and pensive there.
I was just thinking spreadsheets, to be fair, the pain of them. So, I mean, this is very like crystal ball, isn't it? Like, what's the future of somebody's role going to look like, and how is that going to be divided up, and what's the value to the business, and if 50% of it disappears, what do we do with the other 50%? So I know this is being recorded, but I'm going to caveat it with anything I say now can and probably will not happen. I think there's every opportunity, actually, that operations teams will be more tightly integrated into business operations. And the term I'd probably use is more data-driven decision makers on the events and things like that. Again, thinking about the mindset of how operations works, business strategy, things going from one point to another, immovable deadlines, all of those things, for me, sit really nicely at the center of what event businesses are, which they're trying to make a decision on. How do we grow shows? How do we make them more efficient? I know there's a little bit, and we've already discussed, we don't like the kind of the look and feel and the event design side of things. But I think, you know, coming back to value, we all know that visitor flow is really important around the show. We all know that the touch points that sponsors have are really important around the show. We all know that sales teams have wacky ideas to introduce things like paddle courts and, you know, ping pong tables and all these kinds of things across the show. And while I think the experience of it matters, I think operations teams will be able to look at the data that technology collects and creates around events and actually either build a case to back those assumptions up and integrate that into the event and create a better experience for attendees and sponsors and exhibitors, decide against them. So I think actually there's a lot of transferable skills into those other elements of the business, where it's not about getting event A out of the door and then event B out of the door and event C out of the door. The times in between are about iteration and improvement on those events to make them more compelling options and grow for the show organizers and things like that.
Yeah. As you were just saying that about those transferable skills, it reminded me to just check. They pay more in tech, right, than in events. Yeah, really.
Like I said, the role you want to look at is product manager and engineering manager.
Excellent. Fabulous. One thing I did just want to flag there, with that kind of idea that maybe there might be this divergence, you know, I'll go with Adam on this one. This may or may not ever happen, but say if we do end up having people that focus on the kind of the what was administrative and then the more kind of creative problem solving side, say those creatives, the problem solvers, end up going on site more, so to more events, a bit like the introduction of email has just meant we're organising more events, not less events. I do wonder if actually our workforce could suit spending more time away from home. And like, I totally appreciate that when you're young and a whippersnapper traveling around the world, doing these events, you know, being in hotel rooms every other month or every month, that's great. I love that. As a parent, that was a bit tough. So I think I'm just going to put it out there as a little flag that maybe we need to think about how that might map out with our current workforce.
If I could just add to that as well, because my life's changed massively over the last 5 years. I've had a son and I was all over and everywhere for a long time. I think, we've got to think about operations teams not as individuals going to every single one of those events, the same way that I don't think about marketing as one person's sole responsibility within an organization. You have multiple individuals in charge of marketing an event business, for example. You might even have specialists in certain fields like email marketing or SEO or content and copy and things like that. And I think, back to Stephen's point, that if we're saving 50% of time, the business is going to want to use that to grow their event businesses, do more events, do bigger events, which means that there's going to need to be a bigger operations team in order to deliver that. And what that might mean is there's more senior, more strategic roles within that don't need to necessarily go to Excel every 3 days. And others that maybe need more hands-on experience and are the ones that go more to site and actually want the benefits of travel and those kind of that international experience and things like that. So yeah, I think it could work out like that for some of the larger organizations, at least, anyway.
Yeah, definitely something to be starting to think about potentially. Great. Right. Last big question is, so what happens when it all goes a bit wrong and the AI basically goes, not my problem? Adam, we will go with you since you took a breath then.
The AI overload. Well, I would say at the moment, the least is very true. You're only going to get out what you put in. So if something come out of it has come out wrong, you've probably put the wrong stuff in. And I'm trying to teach my team this at the same time while we're using tools and technology, is if you put the bare minimum in, you're going to probably get very poor or wrong results out of it. And actually with AI, you need to question it a lot back and not just accept the information that it's giving you. But I was reasoning through something the other day with it, and I'm like, are you sure that's right? And then it went, oh no, because at the moment, AI very much wants to please you. They're a people pleaser. They want to give you the information that it thinks, predicting that you want, that's going to make you run away and be happy about it and all that kind of stuff. And often that's not necessarily the most accurate and true information. So on that point, it can go wrong. So you need actually, one of the skills you need to learn is to push back when it comes to AI. You need to push back on the AI answers, ask it to reason through things, even ask it then, once it's reasoned through things, to come up with other plausible scenarios that it might not have considered in initial, ultimately reaching to the right outcome. The only other thing that I think we need to be careful of, and this goes for any tools and technology that we use, is security and privacy. That's not a reason to not use these technologies or to be fearful of them, but it's the same as cybersecurity is in place and other GDPRs and things like that, and compliance and things like that. We need to be mindful about how we're using the technology, the information, and where it's going. But there are safeguards against that as well. Companies can have their own cloud systems, so they are only for their organization. They're not connected to the rest of the World Wide Web and things like that. So again, it comes down to training. It comes down to like how you are integrating technology, the strategy and the support that you are putting in there. And I think, Lou, right at the beginning, you identified this is one of the biggest problems in the industry. There's an appetite to use technology, but there's very little support or training going on a team level at the moment to actually make the best use of it. It should be like health and safety, kind of. We shouldn't expect people just to read a document and get it and then be all good to go.
Yes. Oh God, I think we're going to have to create a new module in the Ops Nest for AI and Ops.
Yeah, safety.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, really interesting as you were talking about that. So yesterday we started building a data chunk from Ops Nest members, you won't, Oxnest members, you won't have heard about this yet because we just started building it yesterday. It was really interesting. And what we want a resource where for global events, you know, if you know that at this venue in this country they do it differently, it basically that information would go in this database. And I was trying to build it and I was like, this just doesn't look right. I can see how it works for now, but maybe things will change. So I asked Fred, I was like, if you were going to build a tool for this purpose, how would you format it? Would it be multi-tabbed on one tab? And what would the fields be, and how could we then use it? And it was brilliant. It kind of went back and forth a few times, but we settled on something that we don't then need to adapt because the pure data in it is true, and then we can manipulate it thereafter. It was just a really, I thought, a really good example of what you were saying, Adam, of kind of pushing back, going, it gave me a version. I was like, actually, no, that doesn't feel like it's going to be future-proofed. Give me some other options. Right, Beverley.
I think using terminology like critically evaluate, act as, when you're doing that training is really important. It does go back to Adam, what you're saying. You just can't take any AI outcome as the right answer. I put prompts in around don't always agree with me. And sometimes I argue back, which defeats the object. But you know, AI is never gonna support planning. It's not going to be able to react in a crisis in real time, and so we're always going to need the people at the forefront of that. And I think that's the key, isn't it? It's a tool. It's not going to replace us.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, we do love a problem to solve, so AI giving us a problem is just another problem, isn't it? We're good at that bit. Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, Beverley, I would actually disagree there, where you said that AI will never be able to handle a crisis. I think there will come a time in the future where it may well do. I mean, if you even today give it a prompt of you are a crisis management officer and give it a scenario, it will spit out a pretty reasonable response right back at you.
But in real time, and in the event environment, some of the curveballs that we deal with in a million years, there is so many variables. I don't think that you'd ever get a usable response in a crisis situation.
We'll see. We'll have a little wager.
Yes, yeah, exactly. We'll come back in a couple of years and figure out what's happened.
But yeah, I mean, that takes me on to my next point, actually, which I think the events industry as a whole does tend to be quite risk averse, because you know, you have one day of the year where you make £27 million and you can't afford for anything to go wrong on it. So when it comes to using these new novel technologies, there are a lot of companies that I think face some resistance to change because they have something that works. And I know, especially a year or so ago, you were hearing a lot of talk about hallucination and, you know, the AI, it can give wrong outputs. And that's true, it absolutely can. And as Adam and Lou, you were saying, you do need to be careful and verify sometimes the information that's coming back. However, there have been a huge amounts of progress made recently in terms of reducing those errors and making the output of the AI more accurate. And also in the way that you kind of build the systems in the first place, things like MCP, Model Context Protocol now, giving agents access to tools in a way that they weren't able to access them before, reducing errors on that side of things. And then also going back to our discussion earlier about treating the AI almost like a particularly thick intern, and making sure that the process that you want to automate is laid out in very plain language, split into manageable chunks, and then also overseen by a kind of manager style agent that checks the output of you know, whatever the previous agent has spit out. I think from my experience anyway, that's reduced 99% of any hallucination errors that we were getting.
Right, okay. I mean, some of that just went way over my head. Like the acronyms, I feel at the end of this, we need like a glossary of all the terms that you've all talked about and what they all mean. But I like the idea of kind of using AI, not against each other, but like to kind of check on itself like that. I'd like to think that there's no one better in a crisis than an ops person. So I'm going to go onto Beverley's side. However, I do think it's already brilliant for me as a tool to kind of go, what are the top 5 likely outcomes of this situation? And I think it just helps you think maybe about one of those things that's round a corner that you've not thought about, to kind of broaden your mind about what the solutions might be.
Yeah, right. You're always going to have those edge cases. I guess I was thinking for more kind of common issues that you might run into. If you've dealt with a situation previously and, you know, this is how it was resolved, this is what we did, this is what we'd like to happen if this crops up in the future, then that is just data for the AI to work with.
Yeah. Okay. Right, we are all out of time. However, I'm going to, for those of you that need to drop off, appreciate that. This is recorded so you can catch the last 2 minutes. But for those of you that can stay on, there's a quick poll that we're going to put in about, after this conversation, will you give any new tools a try? And then while you're busy doing that, I want each of you on the panel to let us know a tool that you suggest we go away and try. Adam, coming to you. You already gave us Fixer, so it can't be Fixer.
I've actually been wearing mine. So I've got what's called a compass.
Right.
Which I think they're just going through a rebrand. So I will say that it could be called something else. And this is not the only one of these that's on the market, but they are becoming a little bit more popular, and they might be a bit controversial to people because this is listening to me all the time. It's trained on my voice. There is an app that goes with it, and the main thing I'm using it for is to remind me of things that I've said or agreed to do. Look online at something called the forgetting curve. It's something that affects every single person on this planet. The amount of information we can retain over any given period. Massive drop off. It's like 20% of what we discuss within 5 days is the maximum amount of things that we can retain. AI tools, video recordings, things like that, fixers, fathoms, all these kinds of comms are becoming ubiquitous now. But I can't carry a fathom or a fixer around with me. This I can, and actually, it's actually hilarious already. The things that it's recording me and my wife talk about. It's already solved one argument, so I will say it's been worth every penny already. Now, it doesn't personally identify my wife. It doesn't personally identify my son. It doesn't even identify me in what it calls its memories. But what it does is it starts to pull out things that it thinks you need to remember and gives you action cards. So I'm now finding myself probably once an hour, once every couple of hours, going through and going, oh, actually, yeah, I do need to do that. I do need to do that. I do need to do that. So rather than me create a task list or a note taker, I've now got a compass.
Wow. That's just blown my mind. And I think I might need to get one.
If you think about that from an event environment, you know, an operations person talking to multiple people in an extremely short period of time, so difficult to even jot all of that stuff down that you need to action. They could literally be passing conversations in an aisle for 30 seconds. And I think technology in those kind of roles and those environments could be very, very crucial. I'm going to be still very mindful about when and where I wear mine, because I think, you know, just naturally, I'm not going to be wanted to, I'm certainly not going to want to go out with and have a drink. That's for sure.
A bit Black Mirror.
But, you know, there are certain like work environments where I think this type of thing will become very commonplace and very accepted, that in that environment, you know, people wear these because it's a practical tool and a piece of technology that helps us be productive.
Interesting. As I mean, my brain is blown. Right, Beverley.
I was just thinking that would be such a wonderful tool for kids as well. You know, my 14-year-old son and doing his GCSEs and doesn't seem to remember anything that he's ever taught. But mine is not as glamorous. I just think Scribe is a wonderful tool. So for standard operating processes, exhibitor onboarding, it does save a huge amount of time. Also, I love Fathom. I know we just discussed that. I'll put that in the link as well.
Brilliant. I love those. We use Scribe for some of our induction stuff. Really rate it. Stephen, over to you.
I'm going to give my tool as PROSP, PROSP, and this is a tool that can help you with your LinkedIn outreach. You can actually clone your voice on there with AI, and then have the AI send personalized voice messages to people on LinkedIn, send the connection requests out, send the voice messages out. Saying whatever you like to people.
I like that.
If I could just give one other shout out, this is not a technology, but it's a platform I came across recently. And I think the Ops Nest need a profile, and it's a website called Promptly. And the idea is it's user-generated prompts that you can then use for certain things within your business. So there is actually a whole discovery section to it. You can search for marketing things, you can search for that things. But wouldn't it be great for the Ops Nest to have a collaborative board of prompts that help operations people that they can go and search and look at and grab and use for AI?
Brilliant. Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'm going to throw one in there, which is Whisper. So WISPR. Thank you, Adam, for that recommendation. I would add a word of caution. If you are in an open plan office, it could be a bit annoying. I work from home. It's just me and the dogs. They don't seem to mind it. But basically, it's a dictation tool that I find is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Right. We are way over time. Thank you so much to you, the panelists, to Catherine and Mike for joining us and making us more understandable to more people, to the guys at Yoonity, and to everybody that joined the session. Hopefully we might see a couple of you at the hackathon on the 5th of June. You know where I am. Catch me on LinkedIn if you've got any questions. Okay, take care. Thank you.